glorious day.
Hello, Jared.
What's up, Pastor Matt?
Well, you're letting me push buttons today.
I am.
Apparently, you shouldn't allow the senior pastor to hit buttons.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah.
You know, we have fun.
Yes, that's right.
Well, welcome to the Connect podcast. We have a fun show set up for you guys today. We're actually going to be looking at some current events and how we should be responding to them, or at least give suggestions. Maybe we don't. I don't know. We're going to talk
Maybe
about.
We're just talk about the events.
We're just going to talk about these events. But before we do that, the most current event I think for both of us right now, and for a lot of people who might be listening, is that this week is back to school week.
Yeah, where we live, everybody's going back to school.
Everyone's going back to school, and it's kind of like a bittersweet thing where you're like, hey, the kids are gone all day, but now we have to figure out how to get them up, get them out of the house, pick them up.
This is true, yeah. The celebration at the Manning house is like a shot of whiskey in celebration of the kids this summer being over.
As they're gone?
Yeah,
like the night of or the morning of? As soon as you get them out the door,
first night.
You're pulling them out.
First night. And so, yeah, all the kids are back as of today,
and
which was really kind of weird because I was going to the gym today, and it was like a madhouse on the streets when I was going to the gym, which normally I can cross the street without even hitting the crosswalk signal because there's nobody out there. But today it was wild. And then after school started, it was like dead quiet, and kind of weird. So
you drink the whiskey.
Yes, not my kids.
Welcome home, kids.
That's right.
Get your shot glasses out.
Right. Yeah, nope, they don't get any.
Oh, that's good. So our four oldest ones went back to school yesterday.
Okay.
And you know the book Alexander's Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day?
Yeah.
That's exactly how yesterday felt like in the Haley household.
That movie is fantastic.
It is a good movie. It's really fun. But living it is not so fun. So we always take the, first day of school pictures. Okay. And so we get the kids all dressed up. Christiana made them a nice little sign that had their weight and their height and things that they like and different things. And so we get up extra early so we can take all of these pictures. The Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Haley Day started actually a couple weeks ago when we got the boys their back-to-school haircuts.
Okay.
And they were horrible. Like the worst haircuts I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
It was like they had mullets in the back and then monk-type cuts in the front.
Yeah.
And
Christiana picked those up?
She didn't pick them. Like what happened is she dropped them off with her mom and told the haircutter what to do.
Yes.
And then she went and did something else. And then she came back after they were done. And she was like, oh my gosh, this is not what I asked for at all. And she came home and she was really frustrated with them. And I'm like, well, you got to go back.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, the haircutting lady, she just wasn't all that nice. And I don't know if I want to deal with it. And I'm like, you have to go back. This is terrible. Like, they look ridiculous.
We have 80 monks.
We can.
80s style monks.
80s monks.
Yeah.
Yes. We should have taken a picture with the profile because it was, and like, she like layered it weird on the side. It was like, I've never seen anything so horrendous. So she did. She ended up taking them back on Sunday and getting them fixed. And so they look like normal children again, which is good for the first day of school. But that's how that happened. So yesterday, we get them up, we're taking pictures, and man, last year, we were just kind of notorious for always being late and then having to walk. Like, it's like the shame walk like the doors are locked where they normally go in, and so you have to take them in through the front office and get them tardy notes, you know?
Yep.
And I'm like, I don't want to get tardy notes on the first day of school. And so I start like losing my crap. I don't know how else to say it, right? Yep. So I'm just freaking out and yelling at everybody and get everybody in the car. And Christiana wants to be there for the first day too. And so since we're fostering, we have the two babies with us as well. And so we're trying to cram everybody into our car. And we finally get there, and it's like 8:04. And they lock the doors at 8:05. And so we're like racing the kids across to get into the door. And we did. We made it.
You made it. Good.
We made it. We got them in. So we live in Keensburg. We get home, and I had a video shoot yesterday. So I drive to the church, which was like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And then the shoot was up at the Flatirons.
Okay.
And so we drive to the Flatirons. We do the shoot. We get done around noonish. Come back here. I drive all the way back up to Keensburg to get the kids out of school. I'm late. getting them.
So you were tardy.
I was tardy picking them up, but everyone's coming out of different doors now, okay, because than they did last year.
Yep.
And so the kindergartners last year, I'm sorry. Nope, the kindergartens come out. Our kids aren't in kindergarten anymore, so they don't come out the front door. They now are in first grade. They come out the back door.
Yes.
I didn't know that. And so we're waiting in the front, and at the same time, I have to bring our youngest foster back to Adams County for his visitation at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
It's now 3:10, and it takes 45 minutes for me to get back here. And I'm like, where are my children?
Yeah.
And so eventually they walk around. The teacher wants to talk to me. Hey, we just want you to know. And I'm like, that's great. Thanks for the information. I got to go. So I get them in the car, get them home, get William in the car, and then we drive down here, right? I get him to his visitation 15 minutes late. So I'm now late 3 times in one day. And my car needs gas. I'm like, okay, it's fine. His visitation's an hour and a half long. I'm going to go get gas. I get onto 120th. It's now rush hour traffic. There's 2 left turn lanes and then 2 straight lanes and then a right turn lane.
Yep.
I'm dead center in the middle, about 4 car lengths away from the light at a red light, and my car dies.
Oh, you ran out of gas. You were that guy.
I didn't run out of gas.
Oh, your car just died.
My car just died. My car died. I turn on my hazards. I'm stuck, and I'm sitting there like, Lord, what do I do? Like, I can't push it.
Right.
Like, I'm a hazard.
Yeah.
I end up calling the police. So I call 911.
Yeah.
I get the Thornton dispatch, and they say, hey, 911, where's your emergency? I say, I'm at 120th and Huron.
Yeah.
And she says, oh, I'm sorry. That's not us. I need to transfer you. And I'm like, wait a second. I'm in an emergency.
Yeah.
And instead of attending to my emergency, you are transferring me like this is a sales call.
Yep. Yeah. You got to get to the right person, Jared.
So they transfer me to Westminster.
Okay.
Police dispatch. They say, okay, what's your emergency? I tell them all the stuff. But I'm just sitting there. People are honking at me. People are glaring at me.
Yes, as they should have.
And I'm like, what do you want me to do? My car won't turn on.
Yeah.
A girl pulls up behind me and gets as close as she can to my bumper and starts honking her horn with my hazards on. And I'm like, what?
What to do?
Eventually, she backs up a little. She literally nudges her nose of her car on my bumper and scrapes my bumper as she comes up beside me and just stares at me and starts yelling at me.
Yeah.
I can't even roll down my window because my car is dead.
And it was 100 degrees yesterday.
It was so hot. I'm sitting there sweating in my car with no AC. Yep. I looked at my phone. It was like 98 degrees still outside.
Yep.
And so I open my door and I'm like, what? My car is dead. I can't move. And she goes, oh, is your car broken? And I'm like, yes. And she's like, oh, well, that's my bad. And she speeds off. And I'm like,
well, at least she admitted it.
I'm like, you think I'm just sitting here for fun? Like, you think this is fun for me?
Right.
I ended up posting a video on Facebook.
Yeah.
And so really I was hoping, it was like my desperation of, is there anyone close that can come help me as I'm sitting here waiting, you know? And I did. Like Pastor Chris called and Angie called. And, you know, all these different people were like reaching out like, are you okay? Do you need help? You know? And thankfully, too, my brother-in-law, who's currently living in Keensburg while he's looking for another place to rent, was at the Target on 120th and
Not
Washington.
Too far away.
And so he was actually able to come over as well. I had to call Human Resources and let them know, hey, I'm going to be late again picking William up for the 4th time because I'm stuck here in the road. The police show up. This is the next funny thing. The police are coming behind me, right? Like they should be. And there's another car. And instead of getting out of the way, he just keeps inching closer to my car, like as to get out of the cop's way. The cop gets out and starts yelling at him. He's like, his hazards are on. We're here to help him. What are you doing?
Get out of the way.
And he's like, are you an idiot? Like, what are you doing? So that guy finally gets out of the way. The cops come. They're super nice and helpful. You know, a tow truck comes, which, of course, my insurance doesn't cover this tow truck. I have to have him tow me off to a parking lot where then Geico brings an additional tow truck to take my car to the mechanic. And so I have to pay this guy, he calls it a spot moving fee of $70. And I'm like, oh, well, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that.
For spot moving me.
So it was late, so the mechanic's not open. I called them this morning and I said, hey, I had my car dropped off to you. She's like, hey, we're really behind. Just want you to know. I was nice. I'm like, I totally get it. I'm like, but I trust you. Like, I've been to plenty of mechanics I don't trust. I trust you guys. Do what you got to do. Here's what I think is wrong. And she's like, okay. And then she seemed kind of overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And so I was like, are you okay? Like, you don't sound okay. And she's like, yeah. She's like, we have a lot going on. Allergies are bugging me. I'm like, okay, I just want to make sure, like, you're fine. Yeah. She called me back like an hour later and said, hey, the mechanic was able to look at your car. I wasn't trying to schmooze her. I was like,
nice to the front office people.
I was genuinely like concerned for her. But I think it was because of that. She was like, she must have people calling all the time that are just irate with her, yelling at her, because that's what people do. Because people yell at you when you're stranded in the middle of the road and there's nothing you can do because people don't use their brains. And so,
So that wrapped up your day.
Yeah. So it was my alternator. My alternator is out.
Okay.
And so my battery died because it wasn't charging my battery. So they're getting that replaced. I got home at like 7:30 as the kids are going to bed for school the next day. Yeah. I saw them, dropping them off, picking them up, and then going to bed.
Yes.
So that's all I saw of my children yesterday. Christiona's like going crazy too because she's ready for me to be home as we have, 7 kids, 9 and under at home. And so it's kind of chaotic at the Haley house. So that
was your no good day.
That was my no good day.
Yeah, you should turn that into a movie script.
Oh
they can make it into a second movie.
Yes, the next terrible, horrible. We need to add a few more elements to it.
Maybe Matt Damon could play you.
I like that. Ooh, that's my celebrity doppelganger. You're giving me Matt Damon?
I'm going to go with Matt Damon.
That's so nice of you.
Yeah.
Man, Matt, I owe you a favor.
There you go. There you go.
Hey, this is Matt Manning, and I'm the senior pastor here at Crossroads Church. And if you're enjoying what you're listening to today, we'd love for you to subscribe to this podcast. You can leave us a comment. We read all of them. And we would love for you to share what you're listening to with your friends. Every Sunday, we gather together as a church to celebrate what God is doing. And you can join us at 8:30, 10, 11:30 online or in-house. Let's get back to it.
So anyway...
That's where you're at.
That's my back to school story yesterday.
Our back to school has been a lot less
stressful
at this point. We got Mercy to school at elementary, and then Cademan, he rode the bus for the first time because we don't want him riding his bike by himself to school. And then Theo, he'll ride his bike later today because 6th and 7th and 8th graders all go different times on the first day.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, and so they'll figure that all out. And then Cademan, this is our biggest worry today, is my 6th grader is in charge of picking up my daughter from school today.
Oh, man.
And so we won't let him ride his bike to school by himself, but we do trust him enough to go pick up his sister, I think.
Yeah.
And so, so that's the big stress today. But I'm confident he's going to come through.
Yeah. You put trackers on them and stuff like that?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So there's
little apple fobs.
Well, this is Theo that's doing this?
No, Cademan.
Oh, Cademan. Okay. Yeah. He doesn't have a phone, does he?
Yeah,
he does. Oh, he does have a phone. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, that's got to give you a little bit more.
Yeah, we give all of our kids a phone in 6th grade so that they can travel the world without us on their bike, but we still know where they're at.
That's good.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, 6th grade. Oh, man. I don't even want to. We're not there yet.
Not go down that road.
We're not there yet. So, anyway, that's the current events, but there's a lot of things going on around the world that I thought it would be good for us to talk about today and just kind of get your thoughts and reads, and I can give some of my thoughts and reads on them too. And the first big thing is in the last few days, is it the last week? Week or so. Just all this kind of crazy stuff that's happening in Afghanistan again. Kind of the re-rise of the Taliban, and I mean, at least in the news for us.
Yeah.
And so.
We're kind of living 2001 all over again.
Yeah, it's really weird. And the way that America, or at least our current administration, is responding to stuff going over there, I'm curious on if you like what's happening, if you don't like what's happening.
Yeah.
I'll just kind of turn it to you, and you can kind of give me your thoughts on it, and I'll give you a couple of my own thoughts of some things that have happened that I'm like, I just can't believe it. It just kind of blows my mind. So.
Yeah, when it comes to the whole thing that's happening in Afghanistan, like I think maybe like most Americans, I look at it and I go, countries have to be able to stand on their own. You know, we've been there 20 years. At some point, the country has to own its own space. Otherwise, it's just an occupied territory of the United States, right? So really, to be able to stand on its own, I think that, you know, the pulling out of troops is a bipartisan issue. I mean, Trump said that all the when he was president, all the troops were going to be out by Christmas. We didn't quite make that mark. Biden was very upfront during the election cycle that he was pulling troops from Afghanistan. And so I think that from both sides of the aisle that this has been something that Americans want. Is it's time to let that country stand on its own. What's surprising to me is how badly it's gone.
Yeah.
And how much the media, both sides of the media, have really just like beat up the Biden administration. And
which is interesting.
it is interesting that
like
both sides are.
Is this the first like bad press that Biden has gotten in
at least
5 years?
At least from mainstream media,
Yeah.
right? And so I look at that and, you know, while, you know, I didn't vote for Biden, there's certainly, I don't think he's a terrible guy, and I don't think he's, you know, a great guy. I think he's
a
probably
Broncos
like an
quarterback.
average guy. Yeah, he's an average. He's an average guy in that space. And I always tend to try to give grace to leaders.
Sure.
Because I know, like, from behind the scenes, and, you know, we have a church of 1,500 people. And, you know, we spend a lot of time trying to put together good plans to make changes and, you know, to either shut things down or start new things. And as good as those times are that we put all that planning together, like, there have been moments where we unrolled a plan and it was like, this is absurd. Like, this, we're failing miserably at this. And it wasn't for a lack of planning, right? And there's sometimes that things gone super well, and it's like, wow, those far exceeded any plans that we had actually put in place in that space. And so when it comes to leaders, I'm usually try to give them grace, because I don't think that just one day they woke up and go, you know what, we're just going to pull all the troops out. Like, I think there was a legitimate plan.
Today's the day.
Yeah, legitimate plan, and the plan didn't work.
Yeah.
And there's no space in my life to go back and go, let's just knock on the guy and on the team that put together the plan. Let's spend our energy actually trying to fix the situation and then evaluate it as a whole later.
Yeah.
And so, but I think, you know, in our current news cycle, we are so instantaneous to beating up or giving praise to leaders without actually the evaluation of a whole world.
Sure.
And so certainly there's that side, the political side of it. I think the more human side of it in Afghanistan, what we see is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
The Taliban's not good.
Yeah.
And while most reports said that it would take about 18 months for the Taliban to regain power, like, nobody was thinking that they weren't going to regain power. They just thought it would be 18 months, not 18 days.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a lot of fear,
Yeah.
rightfully so, for women and children under Taliban rule. And what that looks like from human rights, what that looks like.
Even religious persecution, too.
Yeah, religious persecution, all of that.
Yeah.
Like, we're watching the fear of people play out
Right.
in the streets and in the airport of Kabul and around Afghanistan.
Absolutely.
And to remember the people element of it
Yeah.
is quite heartbreaking.
I'm curious where it was part of the plan to just leave American weaponry for the Taliban to take over.
Right.
So
I think those were actually intended for the Afghanistan army, and which they lost rather quickly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
So the way that it was written was like, oh, they had no choice. They had to pull out, and then they just left like all of these drones and Humvees and stuff for
Man, it's crazy,
for the
isn't it?
Taliban.
Watching the Taliban drive around U.S. armored vehicles and it's
playing
wild.
with U.S. drones.
Yes.
You know,
It's wild.
I mean, we didn't have like nuclear bombs in Afghanistan, did we? That we just accidentally left there.
It could be bad if we did.
Yeah, it would be really bad. So, and I think, I mean, I saw an article too that it for whatever reason paints America as weak. I mean, I don't know how we look in the eyes of other countries, especially other like superpowers and things like that. If this particular thing makes us weak or not, but certainly, yeah. Whatever the plan was, it's not working out the way that they intended to.
For sure.
And it's really sad that, I mean, seeing all of these, the human side of it. And
one of the things that we saw, what we just talked about beforehand, was the article that was released where Air Force One came into bring people out of that situation, and the desperation of people holding onto wheels and wings as the airplane is trying to take off, and the video of 2 people falling from the sky off the airplane, and it's kind of actually reminiscent of the way that I imagine Noah's Ark went.
Oh yeah.
You know, when the door gets shut and the floodwaters start coming, and all of a sudden the desperation of people realize or come to fruition.
Yeah.
And what that might have been like.
Remember the Men in Black quote when he's sitting there talking to him about aliens, and Will Smith is like, "Why don't you just tell people? Like, people are smart, you know?" And the other guy's like, I can't think of what his name is off the top of my head, but he's like, "Well, people are smart." He said, "But crowds of people are panicky and chaotic and don't think things through." And he's like, "And you know it, you know." And it's just interesting how we can. It's like our fear takes over, and all of a sudden we're just completely instinctual, and nothing is logical.
Yeah.
When I was in Kansas, I've always had like this unhealthy fear of tornadoes.
Yeah.
I'll call it that.
Yeah.
And so when I'm in Kansas going to school, I lived in a house that didn't have a basement, and so I was always like, "Man, one comes through here and I'm toast," you know. And so the thing is with small towns is the tornado siren is also the same as the fire siren, right? And so
and they are loud.
And they're loud. And so if it stays constant, it's a tornado. But if it goes up and down, it's like firemen come and there's a fire, come to the firehouse. And so I'm in my house doing whatever, and all of a sudden the siren goes off, and I freak out. And I take off running. Like, I literally ran out my front door, and I ran across the street, and we lived across the street from a church, and I'm like in their yard sprinting. I have no idea where. I'm just running
away from the tornado.
And all of a sudden the siren starts to peak down because it's a fire and not a tornado. And I stop and I go, "What is wrong with me? Like, what am I doing right now?" I had no plan, no thoughts. I'm just like, I'm scared. I have to run.
Yeah. Well, it's that when you hit that fear, right? When fear enters into our life, it's either fight or flight, usually in those spaces. And
painting a very poor picture of myself today.
And the way that people think, and, you know, in those moments of great fear, which the Taliban has brought great fear in Afghanistan.
Absolutely.
Like, all of a sudden thinking and logic go out the door, and the best idea is to hold on to a wheel of an airplane that's taking off, because maybe I can make it somewhere that's better than here.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's like the true heartbreaking moment of this whole thing, is that people would rather hold on to a wheel of an airplane hoping to get somewhere that's better than there.
Absolutely.
You know, even if it's at the cost of their life in that moment.
So a really funny article about all of this is that I saw that Twitter has said that the Taliban can stay on Twitter as long as they follow the rules.
Yes.
And I just think that is hilarious. That, I mean, Trump is still banned from Twitter,
right,
for not following the rules, but it's cool. Taliban, you guys just follow the rules, and you'll be good.
I'm actually all for that. As long as people follow the rules, you know, you can play on whatever game you want to play.
Yeah, which is exactly what the Taliban is known for,
right,
is following the rules.
That's right.
Like, when you think of the Taliban, what do they do best?
Yes.
They follow the rules.
Yeah, there's going to be a short-lived Twitter space.
So anyway, if you guys think about it, you know, just continue to remember and pray for those pastors and different people in Afghanistan. That I read something else too, that they're going door to door, like finding people who support America, finding you know, people who are Christians, and there's real life persecution happening right now in Afghanistan. So
the crisis is at a heightened level, right? And I think that most are probably fearful of what's about to happen in Afghanistan is similar to what's happened in Syria, right? Where there'll be great persecution, a great war within the country, and that refugees and regular people will flee.
Yep.
And the sad thing is that the people who are fleeing or who are there, you know, that they've lived 20 years in this kind of mess, in this chaos, and now it looks like it's about to get worse for them.
Yeah. So I wish we had answers. I don't really know how to respond outside of just being prayerful.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I think that's our answer right now.
It's a reality.
Yeah,
so
there's not a lot that we can do in terms of getting there, but I think that part of these last couple of weeks, or days, I should say, has been really praying for the people there. You know, that the Taliban would hold to their word that they're going to treat women and children equitably. We'll see if that actually happens.
Like we said,
yeah,
they're known for
that's
following
what they're
the
known
rules.
for.
Yeah, they
but
hold true to their promises.
But they'll hold true to that, and then also just praying for the administration of the United States right now, that the world is looking to us to lead the way in this, and so
there's so much irony all the time in there.
Yeah.
Like, America, you're terrible, you're the worst. Oh, is it? How do we handle this?
Yeah.
What do we do?
Yeah.
Can you show us how to do that, please?
And I think from Scripture, what we're told is, that we're to pray for the persecuted, but we're also to pray for the leaders of our nation. And right now, our nation has been tasked with bringing peace into another nation, to another country, and that's no small task. And so, as Christians, regardless of where we vote or where our political alignment is, that our calling as believers is to pray for our administration. And right now, that's Biden, his generals, his secretaries, his people, and pray for them that the decisions that they make are wise decisions.
Absolutely. So shifting gears a bit here, the Olympics.
Yeah.
Are they over?
They are over. They were over, I think, a week ago.
Oh,
a little over a week ago.
There's some weird Olympics. Like, there's new event. They're adding new events all the time.
They added surfing this year and 3-on-3 basketball. And
did you see? I don't know if this was new or not. I thought it was, honestly, it's kind of ridiculous. It was handstand obstacle course.
Oh yeah, I didn't see that.
Have you seen that? They're walking on their hands, and they have to go through an obstacle course, and it's a timed event.
Oh, I couldn't do it, so that's an athletic feat.
I mean, it's definitely an athletic feat. I'm just like, really?
Is that what the games have become?
This is a thing?
Yeah.
Like, we watched it almost like, this is kind of funny more than like anything else. But anyway.
And what was really weird about it is that it was advertised as the 2020 Olympics. They didn't change any of the numbers. No, it's just the 2020 Olympics happening in 2021.
You know what, guys? Let's just keep it.
That's right. We spent a lot of money on that.
Let's just keep
logo.
it. We're not going back to those guys to change the 0 to a 1.
That's right.
Oh man. So, but the big thing this year was transgenders competing in the Olympics, and I know that you and I both kind of have our thoughts and our stance on that. It happened, and it happened in multiple ways. So I know that there was a transgender that played. Her name was
Laurel Hubbard.
No, I'm talking about Quinn.
Oh, yeah, the soccer player.
The soccer player. So she was actually a woman that identifies as a man, but still played for the women's soccer team.
Yes,
the Canadian soccer team.
Yeah.
Which, okay.
Yeah.
I don't have any quarrels there.
Yeah.
But there's also men who identify as women,
who transitioned as women,
who transitioned into women, who are then competing against women.
Yes.
And that's kind of where I start to have some issues.
Yeah.
Let me be a little bit more blunt. That's where I start to have an issue.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's where I have an issue for sure. I don't even start's the right word.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, but let's talk about that a little bit. And you're talking about Laura Hubbard, right? She's from New Zealand and is a weightlifter and was competing against other women. And let's just start off by talking about the reality that men and women are built differently. Like biologically are built differently. And so there is clearly a reason why sports have been split is because men biologically have an advantage over women biologically. And that's not that men are better than women. It's just a reality that you can't deny that reality. I mean, if we want to bank on science, that's a reality of science is that we're just constructed differently. And I'm not talking about myself because I'm not an I'm not a big person. We actually were playing softball on Friday. And there's this guy, and he was huge. He was playing shortstop. Really, really, you could tell that he's been playing a long time. And I'm on second base, and I'm like, so who did you pay to get so big? And he was like, oh, man, just luck of the draw. And I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely paying the wrong guy. Because, right. I'm not a huge guy, But for those athletes that are there, like, you look at it, football players and baseball players, you just don't see women that big, right? And so it's not a fair competition to put them up against each other. And so I'm curious your thoughts on that and kind of how there's really, I don't know what we do, or I don't think there is anything that we do, but how do we kind of process through that?
Yeah, I think that, as I think through this, and I've been thinking through this a lot over the last couple of weeks, just a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago or so, I preached a whole message on sexuality in the church and understanding human sexuality and what is our role in the
Which
LGBT.
is really good, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm a firm advocate of,
Yes.
of that message.
Yeah,
So.
the LGBTQ community. How do we as Christians engage that community?
Mm-hmm.
And there is a sense in which our role within that community is to see them as people who are made in the image of God.
Mm-hmm.
Gender dysphoria is real, right? Same-sex attraction is real.
Mm-hmm.
And these things that we have to admit and work and go, okay, so how do we think through this as believers and as Christians in this space? And so that there's, in a way, we want to meet them with grace. We want to show them love, just like we do any people group in that space. And at the same time, we have this thing in our culture where it's sports. Mm-hmm. And I've always said that the transgender revolution actually ends at sports because sports, I think, is the great god of the American culture. And you can mess with about anything, but when you start messing with sports, like that's where we draw the line. Like we're not going to go any further. And so I think that that's what we're starting to see play out because at the end of the day, sports and competition is based on equality. It's based on fairness. And so if you and I are competing as men, I can't take steroids to get bigger, right? That's illegal in most sports. And so there's this rules of competition. And forever, part of
what sport is it not illegal in?
I don't. I'm sure that there might not be a sport that drug tests, right? I don't know. Does hand walking competition? Do they have? I don't know those rules.
I don't know. I don't know the rules either.
Yeah. So, anyways, I think that there's obviously rules, and part of those rules have always been gender based, and the reason that those rules have been put in place is because of the fairness of what you just talked about biology. That when a boy goes through puberty, regardless of what the transition looks like afterwards, if that boy ends up becoming a girl later in life.
It's not just against the rules; it's illegal.
It's illegal. All right.
But this actually says most sports.
Most sports, yeah.
It's prohibited by most sports organizations.
Yeah. There you go.
But I feel like it would be. You would think it would be prohibited by all sports organizations if it's illegal. But anyway, continue.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that
that's what Google tells me.
That's what Google says, and we believe Google.
That's right.
And so I think that when it comes to the men who have transitioned to be women, so they're trans women, that's the way we would describe them, completing in women's sports, that there is an inherent advantage to those trans women over naturally born females. And I think that that's where we start to become uneasy because it's no longer fair. The competition's no longer fair. So you have someone like Laurel Hubbard, who is actually a weightlifter through their 20s and even early 30s. And a really good one. And a good one, yeah. But wasn't quite Olympic good enough. And then in their early 40s, or in her early 40s, all of a sudden she's going to become a weightlifter as a female, right, in a female competition. And it's like, wait, there's not enough hormone therapy in all of the world to reverse the effects of Laurel having experienced puberty as a boy.
Right.
There's just not. And so that inherent disadvantage, I think, is what our culture is struggling with, and the culture war is set up. And I think that fairness and competition is going to win. Because ultimately what's fascinating in this discussion to me, and just so I have issue with it as well, I think it's tearing down women in sports is what this issue is.
You made a comment that all of the positive effects of the feminist movement.
That's where I was going to
go ahead.
Yeah,
sorry,
so
that was really good. I didn't want to miss that.
So all of the positive effects of the feminist movement, which there's negative effects to the feminist movement as well. But a lot of the feminist movement that moved towards equality, particularly in sports, is being unraveled before our eyes. And so the feminist movement, which was a very leftist movement, is now being trumped by even more left movement.
Being deconstructed almost.
Deconstructed. Yeah. It's fascinating. So you have like J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, who comes out, who is a known feminist, speaks against the transgendered movement and what it's doing to women, and she's ostracized because she doesn't hold to the new value. And what she's fighting for is going, hey, look, I spent my entire life fighting for equality when it came to women in sports, in literature, in name it. And now all of a sudden what you're saying is that men who transition to women can take all of these spots, and they're trumping women again. And so the feminist fight, I think, is coming again in our culture because of this. And so you have, I think, most of the conservatives, even way right-wing conservatives, are going to line up with the feminists, which is going to be a crazy sight to see in our culture. And the march is going to happen towards the transgender. And I don't know that it's going to be a good march. I think most in those moments, grace and love will go out the door, and it'll be a fight to see who stands at the top of the mountain.
Yeah, and everyone is angry for because we lose our minds.
Yeah.
And we no longer think logically.
Yeah.
And we honk at people when their hazards are on in the middle of the road.
In the middle of the road.
Yeah. And instead of stopping and saying, man, what's going on? How can I help? We say, get out of my way. I need to get to where I'm going.
Yeah.
And you're bothering me.
Yeah. And so what's fascinating about this whole discussion is, the Biden administration has come out and basically this week said that we're going to stand with the transgenders, the transgendered women who want to compete in female sports, that you have a place. And so the director of education, the assistant attorney general, a whole host of people are backing this movement where transgendered women can participate in female sports. And that is a movement of our administration that's currently overseeing our country in that direction. And what's odd to me is I think that as we step back, I don't think that most people would even care if there was a transgender sport, right? Like transgender men and transgendered women, if they want to compete, that they can compete in a transgender soccer
like their
sport.
own kind of like league.
Yeah, their
Like
own
there's a men's
their own
league,
category, right? You have the men's
women's
category, you have
league.
the women's category, and you have a transgendered category. I think that most people go, that's an easy option. Let's just do that. But for whatever reason, that's not seen as equitable in our society.
The valuable option.
Yeah,
There's
and
probably
so what's
not
more
enough.
equitable is having former men participate against women.
Yeah.
And that's seen as equitable when everybody
Yeah.
knows that's actually not.
Where to me, I mean, like with Quinn, like, hey, I have biology that says I'm a woman, and so I'm going to compete on the women's soccer team, even though I identify as a man.
Yep.
Like, I can see some validity there where
She's not going through hormone therapy. She's not transitioning.
Yeah, and it's not making the playing field unbalanced.
Yeah.
And so that's I think the issue is making the sports playing field. I mean, from a pure sports place and not any other kind of space, But anyway,
what's really interesting in this is after I gave my sermon on sexual identity and a theology of sexual identity, this was actually the most asked question because I brought it up in my sermon just as a question, like, is having a transgendered woman participate in a female sport, is that okay? And I just kind of left it hanging, like I was just building the tension for what our culture is facing. And actually the most emails that I got in terms of clarification is what do you actually believe about that? And it's just the hot topic, right? Because Americans are we love sport so much, and sport needs to be fair and equitable. And this is going against all the values that we hold. And so you even have, maybe one last thing, in the USA Today about 2-3 months ago, it was really interesting. They had a 17-year-old female athlete who was a runner write an article about the transgendered movement. And in her particular state,
I heard this.
There's 2 men who have or high school guys who have transitioned to being women. And they were track athletes before, they're track athletes now. And these 2 transgendered athletes have taken all of they're
winning
state, they're winning, all of that, right? And this teenager who's writing this article, who is this young woman, was one of the top female runners in the state until these 2 transgender athletes showed up. And so she was asked to write an article. And she wrote an article that was really insightful. And what was fascinating in the USA Today article, which USA Today is the media publication that's pushing the transgender further than any other media publication. That as she wrote it in light of male and female, right? Those who are formerly male now competing as females, so on and so forth. And they ran the article, and apparently there was some pushback against the article from the far left. And in that, they went in and they made adjustments, making the language more gender neutral, which actually, if you read it now and you read that, you can actually see that it takes away all the punch of what she was saying, because now all of the nouns have been made gender neutral. So it takes away the very argument that she was trying to make. And it's fascinating to me that the USA Today publication, which is well read in the United States, decided to do that. Take away a young woman's voice.
In order to push their agenda.
And again, going back to the feminist movement, that's what they fought for.
Right.
So it's a crazy space. I think that our place as Christians in this space is, when it comes to competition, that's hard as Christians. Like, we can enjoy sport. I think we have freedom to enjoy sport, and that sport should be equitable.
Mm-hmm.
I think that also as we enter into this cultural war, we have to realize that sport's not the hill to die on, you know? And so how do we put our voice into this with love and grace, coming up with reasonable solutions so that sport is fair and equitable, and at the same time realize that we cannot sacrifice our witness because of sport. And I think that that's the tension that we have to wrestle through.
Absolutely. Well, there you go.
There it is.
All the answers that you've been looking for.
Or none.
They're wrapped up into an hour conversation. You're
There you
welcome. No, Matt, this has been good. There's just so many things going on and so many things that we can always be talking about. And so I thought it was good today just to kind of address some of these hot topics that are happening in our culture and around the world, and get your thoughts on them. So thanks for being open with those things, and we're really looking forward to. We're actually having a man-to-man series that is going to be coming up here in just a few weeks. The next few weeks actually is our series is called The Weird Things Christians Do.
Yeah.
And so we have 3 weeks talking about why Christians are weird and why that's okay.
Yeah.
And so
That'll be a lot of fun.
That's right. It's going to be fun. But then after that, we have a man-to-man series where you are actually going to be walking us through what it looks like to live in godly manhood.
Yeah.
Right? Biblical manhood.
Yep.
And so be looking for that. We have a lot of fun things tied up into that series. And so just kind of wanted to give everyone a heads up on that's happening. It's coming. It's coming. Be prepared. It's a great time to invite your friends, your neighbors, whoever might. I just think that this is something that our culture in general, not necessarily that our people in the culture are saying, hey, how do I raise my kid in a biblical way?
Yeah.
But we want to know, what does it look like to raise our kids, especially our young boys in this cancel culture? You know, what does it look like to raise your 13-year-old, your 10? 11-year-old? Yeah, I was close. Yeah. My 9-year-old, how do I raise him up to know his identity and where that falls in a way that really makes sense to him, for him to be able to flourish? So I'm looking forward to this series. I know that you're looking forward to this series as well. I think you are.
I am, because I think that when we look at culture, like we have these two pictures of masculinity, and we're not comfortable with either of them. We have a toxic masculinity, and we look at that and go, well, there's a reason it's called toxic, right? And then, as guys, we look at
the beef head, right?
The beef head, yeah. And then you have kind of this feminized version of masculinity. And for most men, I think, and guys who are raising children, boys, we look at both of those.
That's the Raymond, right?
Yeah, the Raymond, yeah.
From Everybody Loves Raymond.
Absolutely.
The Raymond, what's his last name?
Yeah, I don't remember. Barone.
Barone, yeah.
Raymond
so
Barone.
I wanted to call him Romano, and I was wrong. So
that's his real name.
But kind of that
yeah.
weaker
So there's those two
man.
spaces of manhood that's presented in our society, and I would say most men are not comfortable in either of those spaces, and we're actually called to be greater than both of those through the scriptures and the way that God created us.
And so if you're a woman, don't think that you're not allowed to come, because you need to be there too, because you guys are the ones. You need to understand what that looks like as well, and how you can support your husbands, how you can look for a future husband, how you can support your brothers, your own sons in living out this manhood that is really the way that we're supposed to be living. So, looking forward to that. So, awesome. Thank you so much for being with me here today, Matt, and we will see you next time.
All right, sounds good.